Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Buchanan Report this third day of September 2019. My name's Ivan Buchanan, and I am your host, and my co-host, as always, Ron Hanks and Rhonda Moon Lane. If you're joining us for the first time, our call-in number is 347-857-1710. Again, that number, 347-857-1710. And if you do call in, try to watch your language if you would. Try to keep it as clean as we can. Our guest tonight is whistleblower Mary Ellen Belding, exposing vile abuse of women and minority contractors and public corruption. But before we get to our guest, I want to remind everyone that our website is thebuchananreport.com, thebuchananreport.com. And I want to wish a happy birthday to the American flag. September 3rd, 1777 was the first day the American flag was flown. Go on the VA Corruption by the Buchanan Report Facebook page, and it's there. Share it. Get the word out. People ought to be celebrating that. Again, happy birthday to the American flag. Outside of that, I'll go ahead and apologize now. I just couldn't resist. I'm not even going to read what I posted. There was a little cartoon, so whatever. We're only supposed to post things VA related, and Rhonda gave me my warning, so I'm not kicked out yet, but I'm working on it, I guess. Also posted on the VA Corruption by the Buchanan Report, there is a footage of the Bahamas helicopter over there about, about 3 minutes worth. Man, that place is devastated. I don't know how many years it's going to take them to rebuild that thing. Wow. So that's it for me. Rhonda, you got anything? And please be nice to me, even though you gave me a warning.
All right. I'm going to have to give you 2 warnings. They're not VA related, so just don't let it happen again. I have 3 stories, but they're all intermingled. I was doing my normal going around. You posted something on the Buchanan or VA Corruption by the Buchanan Report. I read it. There was one in my email and another one on another site, and I was like, well, that sounds like the one I heard earlier. So I'm just going to start with the top one. It's 10 suspicious deaths at Clarksburg, Virginia VA Hospital. Apparently, 2 elderly veterans were killed the same way, injections of insulin that they didn't need. They died a day apart in April 2018. Beyond those 2, at least 8 more deaths are being looked at by investigators. So they don't have any idea who's done it, but they all seem to be related. The U.S. Senator Joe Manchin learned about the problem in July 2018. That's a couple of weeks after the doctors notified the administrators of the unexplained deaths. But he didn't know until last week, that the deaths had been ruled homicide. Okay, so we got 10 there. And another one, an investigation into a surgeon at the Biloxi VA ends with oversight concerns for the entire facility. It started as an investigation into a claim of improper care against the surgeon. It ended finding multiple infractions by the leaders at Biloxi. 18 recommendations is what the OIG ended up. It was involving a thoracic surgeon. The OIG determined that he did not have the proper credentials when he was hired in 2013. Some of these surgeries that should be a 4-hour surgery, it was 18 hours. So apparently they're not looking very well into these doctors. Here's the third one. Missouri board says Casey area doctor bought surgeries, but he's now practicing in a Kansas VA. All 3 of these came out within the last few days.
Yeah, it doesn't really help when they don't have to be certified in the state they're working in.
Well, exactly. If you read through these, there's actually, let me find it. There's a place where they post this information. It's called the National Practitioner Database, and it lists doctors who, according to the Government General Accountability Office, may have a record of misconduct or substandard care, but they're not looking there. They're just hiring them.
Right.
I believe we have a thing like that on our website as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I believe so.
Yes, we do have a website. It's on our website, so if you have a new doctor coming in, you might want to go see. Check them out, make sure they do. You know, I can't see that the VA is able to hire doctors like this. After you read the stories, I mean, they're charging these doctors with criminal acts. They're being sued left and right.
But look how many years the people calling for appointments, they're not getting their appointments, they're being canceled, this and that. Look at the suicide rates. I mean, that's been going on for years. Why would this be any different?
Yeah. Okay, there's another one. Former VA doctor charged with 3 counts of involuntary manslaughter because he misdiagnosed. He's a chief pathologist.
But that's involuntary.
Where is that one out of?
This one is Fayetteville, VA.
Oh, Fayetteville, Arkansas?
One of them, Fayetteville, Louisiana.
Louisiana? 10%,
okay. 10% of his diagnosis involved clinical errors. Some of them, he said they had the wrong cancer, so they got the wrong treatment and died.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
All
of those
just
in the
lost
last
a close.
week.
Just lost a close friend to cancer, So, yeah, that's terrible.
Sorry. Apparently he was using drugs and alcohol on the job. And his alcohol and drug abuse is linked to over 3,000 misdiagnoses, at least 15 of which resulted in death.
Yeah.
So he's only been charged with 3 so far, but 15 of them resulted in death.
Well, hopefully he's not working now.
Well, I would say he's probably in jail, right? They charged him with
I don't know.
Involuntary. It doesn't say. It just says he was indicted. So
Yeah.
I don't know that he has been arrested. They also charged him with 28 counts of mail fraud, wire fraud, and false statements to law enforcement.
Well, the reason why I asked the question is it's a known fact. We reported it. Other people have come on and reported it and said the same thing, that, the VA hires felons, so, I'm just wondering,
Well, apparently they still are, and they're not even checking out the doctors they're hiring. There's one database they can go to check out and just see if there's any documentation that these doctors have done anything wrong, and they don't do it.
No, they're too busy
then
going back
doctors
on
like the one doctor
and accessing their records.
Yeah, the one doctor that we had on that she tries to do the right thing and they flat go after her. In fact, we've had more than one doctor. Dr. Sue. There's another one too. So many doctors. Now that I sit here and think about it, man, we've had a lot of doctors.
Yeah. Well, it's one that there's 3 lawsuits going for botched surgeries. 3 people died. They just moved him from Missouri to Kansas. He's now working at the Kansas VA.
This one that's indicted, so he is still working.
No, not that one.
Or another.
The indicted one, it doesn't say. There's so many of it. Yeah, there's 4 different ones. This one is, he didn't have the training to use the robotic surgery equipment. So surgeries that would normally take 4 hours, he was taking 12 to 14 hours.
Oh.
He actually poked a hole in a man's bladder while removing his enlarged prostate, but nobody noticed for 2 days after he went into renal failure. Another man, multi-organ failure.
I wonder if any of these people work for the Baltimore Ravens. I probably shouldn't say that. I'm going to catch it now.
Another one went in for a bladder biopsy. He poked 2 holes in her bladder and then said he was just going to let it heal naturally. She died 2 months later from sepsis.
That is a horrible way to die, too.
Yes.
No, Hansford, he almost died, you remember, because he had his dog with him, and the doctor said he was an emergency, and the doctor was allergic to dogs. Mm-hmm. One doctor out of that big old VA
wouldn't go in the room, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Nuts.
All in one day, I found all 4 of these stories, and they're not old stories. They're new stories. But that's all I have on. Just bad news. I hope you
okay, wait a minute. Now wait a minute. Now we didn't have a show last week because you were off playing around in Washington D.C.
I was.
And you just got done before we came on saying that you and Gary made it all the way to the Veterans Building there, their offices, the VA, the Veterans Affairs office there. And so what did you have to say to them, or what did they say to you?
Well, I didn't dare go in because they probably wouldn't have let me come back out. I was looking for a restroom, and Gary said, well, they'll probably let you go in there. You're a veteran. I'm like, yeah, but they probably won't let me come back out. We'll find someplace else. But I did take a picture to prove that out of everything in Washington, I just walked right up to the VA office.
They didn't have any armed guards or anything like that?
I don't know. I didn't try to go in the door. I'll post a picture so you can see. The lady walking down the sidewalk with us offered to take our picture in front of it, and we said we didn't want our picture in front of the VA.
Oh, gee, that's bad. Why did you do that? Why not?
Because I don't want my picture in front. I got enough pictures, but I didn't want one in front of the VA office. I'm not real fond of them.
That's understandable.
We did have a great time, though. If you go there, do not rent a car. Take Uber or Lyft, because you will rent a car, then you will walk 5 miles, and you'll have to get an Uber or Lyft to get back to your car. So just don't rent a car. You also have to pay $58 a day for parking.
Brother. Oh.
Yes.
At the hotel, if you drive to a hotel, you park your car, they charge you for that too?
Yes, because we were right on the river. There's 2 parking garages, one for the hotels and one for a parking company. And they charge you $38 a day, but it starts every morning at 4 a.m. So if you check out at 11, they would charge you the hourly rate from 4 to 11 a.m., and it would end up being $60 a night. So don't rent a car.
I'm curious, how much does a beer cost in Washington, D.C.?
Honestly, I have no idea. I didn't really drink there. Gary went down and bought a 6-pack a couple times. They have no plastic there. They have no straws.
The whole damn town is plastic. What do you mean they ain't got no plastic?
They don't even put trash can liners in the trash cans. There's no trash bags. You go to buy a little cheapy cooler just to keep stuff in when you don't have a fridge in your hotel room. We had a private balcony, but no fridge. It's even made out of cardboard.
Did they keep the light on for you?
The lights were on. We had a good time. We saw everything, but the things, you see the pictures of them, you have no comprehension of how big that is. The reflecting pool in front of the Washington Monument is 3 football fields long. So wear your tennis shoes. We got bottom. We went to the Lincoln Monument.
You had a good time.
We did. I'll never go back, but we had a good time this time. All right.
Such a good
now
time.
I'm
I'll
done.
never go back.
I'll go back to Virginia. It's gorgeous.
Virginia.
Yep. And we did go on the ride. They had 328 motorcycles, so we have to get 500 this year.
In Arizona?
In Arizona. Yeah, we went to the Virginia Healing Heroes ride. Ours is on November 2nd
that's
here.
That's coming up in October, isn't it? November?
November 2nd, yeah.
That's right. Yeah. You'll be taking another 30-day vacation in November.
Yep. I will.
All right, Ron, over to you. We're taking up time.
All right. Well, I have an article here I picked up out of the local newspaper. Remember, Ivan, the story I did on the fire crew doing their practice with foam and whatnot over there on the eastern slopes, that they were actually contaminating some towns' water with that foam?
Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, guess what? That was Peterson Air Force Base. They're discovering the same chemicals in the groundwater in the Air Force Academy.
Oh, boy.
So, yeah. And it's all linked to that firefighting foam. The Air Force has spent $50 million to address the contamination problem at Peterson Air Force Base alone. So it continues. It does not go away.
Yeah, and that was one incident there. What about Fort McClellan, Lejeune, and all of that crap that they did there? I mean, my Lord.
Yeah. Well, they hid that, though. They made a big deal out of this. So, yeah. We had, what was it, August 22nd. So the 21st of August, there was an order signed by the Commander-in-Chief to forgive student loan debts for disabled veterans. There will be no federal income tax charge, and he's asking all states to waive the taxes on their loans. Right now, just half, roughly, of disabled veterans who are qualified to have their federal student loan forgiven have received that benefit because the paperwork is so burdensome. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? He's also directed them to expedite the process to do it. Why can't they expedite the process on all this garbage that they're dragging out? I mean, not just that. It kind of boggled me mind. The more I read it, the more it pissed me off. My last one is from Ivan's favorite American Legion publication.
Uh-oh.
And it is the world's oldest barber. He is older than the American Legion itself. He's 108 right now. Not only is he healthy, he continues to work full-time as a barber.
Cutting hair.
Yeah, he was a military member in World War II. He worked as a company barber and supply technician. And he was ready to go overseas, and they wouldn't let him go because he was the only married person with children in the company. So he wound up staying stateside and working. But he still goes. He doesn't drive anymore. His 82-year-old son drives him to work. But he works every day. He likes it.
And I bet you the son stays home retired.
Yeah, probably. Probably. But I thought it was really neat. The guy that old, still working. He has a very large following of people that come to get haircuts from him. So, yeah, he says, I like to work. If I stayed home, I'd get old fast. So, that is all I have for tonight. We do have Mary Ellen and Keith Caldwell and Michelle waiting in the wings.
Yeah, Rhonda, you there?
Oh, no, it doesn't show she's dropped.
All right.
Yelling at the dog.
No, she didn't get it.
No, I muted it. I was talking. You just weren't hearing.
I know you were.
All right.
You're always talking.
Not always. All right, we have two guests tonight. First, we're going to be talking with Kevin Caldwell for an update. He's a veteran. He's retired from the Miami VA after becoming a whistleblower. He was ignored and harassed by his medical care providers because he worked and got his medical care at the same Miami VA. So he had to seek help from providers outside the VA using his Blue Cross Blue Shield, which resulted in him paying a large portion of the bills for 2 surgeries. But they finally helped him, and he's still fighting for reimbursement. Kevin, how are you tonight?
Hey, how are you guys? I'm back in Miami. I moved back to Miami from Fort Lauderdale, so I've been going through Hurricane Week, and then it missed us.
Oh, no.
Hey, I wanted to say one thing, Rhonda, that you touched on earlier. When we find out stuff like this with these doctors that injected insulin and these doctors that didn't do, why the hell? And Jay said that the secretary is listening. I want to know why the hell, when something like that happens, that the secretary doesn't go on national TV the next day and say the director was fired, the associate director was fired, all the way down to HR.
I agree.
We have never saw that with the VA, and if there's one thing, I'm a Trump supporter, but if Trump loses the election, it'll be because he did not do what he told the veterans he was going to do, and he did not fix the VA.
No, he hasn't. It's just as bad as it was before, if not worse. This is the first time I have ever saw 4 stories out of 4 different VAs for the same thing. Veterans being killed.
If a doctor is hired and his credentials were looked over or somebody didn't do something, everybody that was in the line of hiring that man should be fired, and the director has to be responsible.
I agree.
And the VA should have reserve teams built.
Let me ask a question here. Wasn't there, we were talking before the show came on, was it you, Rhonda, or Ron? One of you mentioned that recently published that the VA is now admitting that the suicide rates have actually gone up.
Yes.
Did I?
It was me. Yes, military suicides and VA suicides. Let's see. The military went from 216 last year to 325 so far this year. And the veteran suicide rate has increased by 25.9%, while the overall
increased
American
by
adult 25.9.
That's
yes.
a lot.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because Wilkie did come out with something and say that Americans need to step up and start talking to veterans about suicide. And I agree. Everybody at the VA hospital, when you go into a VA hospital as a veteran, you need to put your phone down and talk to other veterans and see what kind of health care they're getting and where they're at, because sometimes all it takes is one person listening to your problem that day to save somebody. So I do agree with him on that. It is America's responsibility, but it's also fellow veterans' responsibility. When you're in the VA, put your phone down, stop talking to your wife, stop talking to your partner, and start talking to veterans. Ask them where they served, how they're doing, what's going on. And if they're having trouble and you've got a little bit more kahunas than they do, step up and help them out.
I agree. That's what I do at the VA. They even know that now.
Everybody has to be an advocate for each other. You know, we're living in a dog-eat-dog world, and when you stand up and you see somebody's not being treated right, you're doing yourself a favor and you're doing them a favor.
Yes.
You know,
yeah, but
so
you got
what
in
would
the
you do?
VA, you got to worry about a VA cop slamming you down to the floor. I mean, that's another article there. VA, it's on VA corruption by the Buchanan report. VA police body slam veterans, killing some of them.
Well, I want to let you guys know where I am with my situation. Please do
it. Brevity is key here. So try to be as brief as you can there.
You know, I filed a workers' comp claim saying that the extraordinary and unusual working conditions with the VA forced me to have stress and anxiety. I fought that for 3 years. We appealed it. I hired a guy that worked for the federal government for 30 years and retired. The appeal went nowhere, so they dead-dogged it there. Now I'm in the EEO court with my retaliation and race discrimination or reverse race discrimination that went on with me. And the EEO court, the lawyer for the VA did not show up at a hearing. I was sitting in my lawyer's office. They sent the email to me instead of my lawyer, even though I notified them over a year and a half ago that I had counsel. And so now I'm fighting with my attorney because the judge says we didn't show up for the hearing, and she's only allowing the VA to ask me questions. She's not allowing them to. So I'm fighting with my attorney right now because I'm telling my attorney, let's ask the judge to recuse herself. If she wasn't at the hearing and the VA wasn't at the hearing and I was sitting in your office, and you sent an email to the chief judge and they haven't responded. So then my lawyer said, well, we'll file for a motion to compel. He did that a month ago. We haven't heard anything on that. So I don't know where my case is right now. They're trying to act like the judge says that we didn't show up, but I'm saying to my attorney, I showed up because I was sitting in your office. And then I want to wrap into something, and I'm going to try to keep it short, Ivan, because I know I get long-winded. But I saw where Jay had released some things about how they were in whistleblowers' health records. You guys know that they offered me $30,000, and I said, well, that's not enough to the OSC attorney. And so he drafted up a letter where I was willing to resign with a failure to perform because of the neuropathy that I had in my foot. And they knew that I had neuropathy in my foot because they were in my health record, which is what Jay has uncovered.
Okay.
So as a whistleblower, that's how I retired. I retired because the OSC offered me a settlement entangled with $50,000. Now I moved forward with a disability retirement, which they should have never offered me. I was entitled to it whether I was a whistleblower or not. Thank God that the OSC attorney did bring it to my attention. I never got a settlement. They said that under the accountability law, in order to get more than $5,000, you had to take it to the secretary, and we all know that the secretary and I are at odds with each other. We all know that I think that Donald Trump made a deal with the devil with Shulkin to stay in office while he was first getting into election, and he would not force him to have any dirty laundry put out there, and that's why Shulkin's still walking. But the deep state that was in the VA was in the VA under Obama and Shulkin was in my phone and he was in my health record. And once I was notified by somebody in MAS that they were in my health record, I went to my personal provider on the outside because they were trying to relate methamphetamine to me. I went on an HDA medication, which is called Vyvanse, and it's the same thing as ADHD.
Hold on a second, Kevin.
Yes.
Kevin, you gotta give us the update because we need to move on here. You know, what is the update on your case? I appreciate you calling in, but we got to keep it to an update so that we can move on here.
I understand. The update is that my workers' comp claim is dead. My EEO is stuck with the courts, and they've done it to another friend of mine, and they've done it to someone else. They don't show up at the hearing, and then they move forward with asking you to answer 30 pages of interrogatories. And then the judge they've got on their side. So the update is that I'm waiting for the judge to either respond on a motion to compel or to reassign another judge. And the situation with my surgery is that I'm doing great. I'm biking every day now. I'm off of morphine. I'm off of Ambien. They took my response for community care. They forwarded it to the VISN director. The VISN director and I don't get along because he was involved with the Bay Pines director, with the director from Miami that was moved to replace the one in Bay Pines. So I don't have any respect for him, and I think he should have been fired 8 years ago when the colonoscopy thing happened in Miami. But he still continues to be part of the deep state. And he's the one that will rule.
Kevin, we're going to have to cut it off there.
Okay.
I'm going to put you in the blue room here. What you need to do here, we got a show coming up, Kevin. I think it was the last show that we did a couple weeks ago where Jay D'Onofrio was on, and got tons and tons of emails, and they're having to do with coming right out of, OAWP office, and we touched on some of those, how the, whistleblower protection unit there is doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and Jay has gone through everything. He actually got them the night that he came on the show. He got them that day, and so just went over a few. But he's coming on, I don't know exactly what week, but within the next 2 to 3 weeks. He's gone through everything. That would be a good show for you to come in on and weigh in on that, because there'll be all kinds of information coming out. I spoke with him today briefly on IM. And so that'd be a good show for you to show up and be able to weigh in on it, because there's all kinds of information getting ready to come out. So moving on here, go back over to you. We're now going to go to our main guest, Mary Ellen. Again, thank you, Kevin, for calling in on your update there. Go ahead.
All right. Now we have whistleblower Mary Ellen Belding. Mary has owned a construction company for over 30 years. She takes pride in being a woman business owner, but she says some contractors hire women and minorities to get the grants for the big projects, but don't always pay them. And Mary Ellen has had this happen multiple times. Hi, Mary Ellen. How are you tonight?
Good, Rhonda. How are you?
I'm doing great. So give us a breakdown of what's happened. I read through your stuff, but I don't want to talk. I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. And
anytime.
Greatly respect the advocacy for the veterans. And I want to preface this that one of the commonalities, if you will, is I was a federal contractor, and being in the business as long as I was, and before I owned my business, I was a compliance specialist for large national contractors.
Uh-huh.
So I knew the rules, and being a compliance specialist, it was, to be sure, that we facilitated the CFR and all the regulations that accompany the bidding and compliance, civil rights, equal opportunity. And a major component, as it should be, is opportunities for veteran-owned businesses. And in the beginning of what I call my nightmare period, it started in 2008, about a year or two later, a veteran-owned company had reached out to me for help in the local community because his business was sabotaged, and basically he was run out of business. The things that happened to him are nothing less than a horror film. As a matter of fact, in the beginning, and it's many of us whistleblowers can attest to.
Well, hold on, Ivan's speaking here. Who ran him out of business? Who were doing these wrong things?
Well, that's something. It appears to be, from what I've been able to figure out, and it is very complicated and convoluted and hard to believe, but it was in part the local construction community, the political community, the union community, but it also, and this is what I found with me, it led right back to Washington, because
what state are we talking about that this happened in?
Well, I'm from this is in New York State, but okay. the chain of events went back to the Department of Defense and other funding areas that implemented these programs, and that also in just about every procurement that I'm aware of have these programs out there for small businesses, veteran-owned businesses, women and minority-owned businesses, all a part of.
So are you saying they violated bidding practices, things of that nature? Absolutely.
The stories, Ivan, I can't even begin to tell you. I would have never believed it. And going back to being a professional compliance individual, and when I obtained some of these credentials and certifications myself, the regulations specify that I take an oath. You know, I when I sign up for these programs allegedly to level the playing field, that I'm going to cooperate and perform in a legal manner. And what I explain to people is that it's almost like being a mandated reporter. If I hadn't reported, if he hadn't reported, if the people that, you know, I'm surrounded by hadn't done the right thing, we would have been in a position to be federally prosecuted. At one point, when I did report one of the instances, I was advised to get a criminal attorney. So
are you talking about back when you were employed by the federal government, or when you were not working for the federal government anymore and you were in business for yourself?
When I was in business for myself. Right. When I was in business for myself. Because I was technically, according to the rules and regulations, and even in some of the specialized programs, I am technically supposed to carry the same protections as a government employee, as a government contractor. However, little did I know.
Well, what is your business as a government contractor?
I was a commercial contractor, heavy highway and masonry, and I had specialized credentials for unique productions that involved, some of it was working on roads and bridges, some of it was specialized concrete construction. So
what are some of the violations that you reported and they swept under the rug, or made them come after you? Let's get specific here.
Well, let's see. I think that one of the largest is I uncovered and reported that a $16 million Army Reserve Center that was going to need to be reconstructed was originally bid as a small veteran-owned set-aside. What I did uncover probably a year or two later is they fraudulently, the contractor that ended up getting the work, the job was rebid through the Army Corps of Engineers, completely disregarding the first bid and the first funding, and they used my credentials as a woman-owned federal hub zone contractor, which is pretty unique in and of itself, and by them falsifying government documents, saying I was doing a substantial amount of the project, a full, very large government contractor obtained the contract, falsifying all the documents, saying that I was doing a large portion of the work. When various things were going on, I was getting mobbed, basically because I would not succumb to the pressure to be involved in the corruption. I was considered the golden.
Okay, so you reported this, and what happened?
I was interrogated by the Department of Defense, and basically because I wasn't getting paid, they were stealing my labor, sabotaging my equipment, and after the 8-hour interrogation that I passed, of course, with flying colors, I was legitimate. They told me very bluntly they didn't care about me. They cared about taxpayer dollars, and they would do nothing to help me. And then the retaliation from me reporting it became horrific from the contractor. There was just one event.
You're talking about the kind of, you were a subcontractor, so the big contractor went into the retaliation mode.
Right. But the thing is,
did they end up doing anything to the original contractor, or no?
No, nothing.
And how long ago was this?
Let's see, 2014, I believe, 2015. I mean, they put it in writing. We're not going to pay you. I mean, but and the thing of it is, in these projects, government projects that we are induced by Congress based on the laws that they've put in effect to allegedly support economic growth and support of veteran-owned businesses, women, and other small entities that in the past haven't really been able to participate. What it's really developed from what I've been able to find out, and I've been investigating this for close to 10 years, is it's evolved into a political, corporate, and government facade to launder money to facilitate bid rigging and harms to small companies like myself. I mean, we can't compete. We can't.
So let me get this straight. So you're saying the general contractor basically is putting in a bid, stating that he or she, the company, has veteran-owned businesses that are owned by women, businesses that are owned by women, maybe not related to, being veteran-owned, and they use all of this to gain favor to get the bid, and then when they get the bid, and they may be lying in there on all kinds of things, obviously, but when they get the bid, then they don't use the subcontractors, the women owners, businesses that are owned by women, businesses that are owned by veterans. Is that what you're saying?
Well, they either don't use them or they use them and don't pay them, steal their equipment.
Well, how do they get away
work.
with not paying? I mean, you can validate the fact that you worked on the project. You have labor, you have materials, etc. How do they get away without paying?
Because the government has nothing in place to provide support to the subcontractor. Their relationship is with the contractor. They'll have nothing to do with the subcontractor. And that's something I did not know. And it's something that, some of the programs out there, Ivan, this is probably like a 3-month show. Everything that I became involved with as a small business, as a woman-owned business, as a hub zone contractor, every program that was supposedly there to support me ended up to be the worst nightmare that I became involved in. Back in...
So let me ask the obvious question here. Why can't you, as the subcontractor, sue the general contractor for the money that they owe you?
Oh, you can. You can. If you can find a lawyer, that will take the case on contingency. I've probably, in some of my battles trying to get my money, I had close to $1 million embezzled from me before I crashed. I think $250,000 was spent on attorneys that were just sucking the life out of me. This isn't a one-time occurrence. This is a playbook. This is a system within the system.
But the point is this: the general contractor has a contract with the federal government. You are hired by the general contractor, so any lawsuit is just on a state level. It's obviously not in federal court. And so what you're saying is that there's just a lot of attorneys that once they understand what this is about, they either won't get involved in it or their fees are just so high that you can't pay it. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Can't afford the attorney fee?
Or that, and I hate to sound like a conspiracy theorist because I'm not. I'm just someone who's been through a quagmire of corruption in these programs. They're all they're funded with billions and billions of dollars of taxpayer money. They're promoted, in my opinion, for the political masquerade of facilitating equal opportunity. And it's not there unless you do, as many people tried to convince me and extort me into playing the game, going along with the larger contractors, being a front company, getting paid only, for half of the work I perform, or being, do as I'm told, use inferior products, use inferior workers, violate the law. That's not who I was. And sadly, if you look into, there are many very successful veteran-owned companies, but there's also quite a bit of fraud in the veteran-owned programs, and it's not by the veterans themselves. It's by other large contractors or union groups or whomever that see the alleged profitability or opportunity that they wouldn't be allowed to obtain, that they facilitate this fraud to take contracts that are meant, that funding that's set aside to help veterans come back, come back to
the obvious question at this point would be this: you're on the East Coast there. Do you believe that this is happening on the West Coast and throughout the country? And if so, do you know if it's happening elsewhere other than just on the East Coast? And if so, how do you know that?
I do believe that it's happening around the country. There was an organization, one of the organizations that unfortunately I became entwined with, very, very, very large organization, and they were prosecuted for falsifying the information. And to be honest with you, Ivan, I never really, in my mind, categorized East Coast versus West Coast. I look at the whole picture now, and I look at, as I started to say, some of the programs I became involved with. For instance, it was through the SBA, and it was through the SBA sponsored by Congress. There was a pilot program that I was invited to because of who I was and the experience that I had. And other veteran-owned companies were invited to the same program, and it was allegedly to be a teaming program to provide us training so we could work together and take on some of these larger projects. And it was funded with, national taxpayer dollars, and that's not what happened. Bottom line, it was used for to facilitate front companies that had been established illegally through falsification and fraud and corruption in the credentials, and then putting somebody like me or some of the other veteran-owned companies or other small companies together with criminals that were trying to cheat the system. So, I know the policies about discussing and exposing some of the hardships of the veterans, and I think that some of the veteran-owned community are they're being harmed and they don't even know it. With these programs that are allegedly out there, money that, in my opinion, that's being wasted that could be used for better medical care or more facilities available to react and be available for the veteran suicides. But to be putting money...
Hundreds of different ways to use that money.
Right. And it's just, you know what, if I wouldn't have lived through it myself, if I wouldn't every time, the first thing I do is go to the CFR, or in my case, go to New York State DOT spec book, or go to OSHA, that's what my career was. I knew where to look, and I knew I was a role player. And when I started to report these things, originally it was very innocently because a criminal attorney told me that I had culpability if the federal government believed that I voluntarily worked with these criminals, that I was a fund company and a fraud. And what I didn't know is telling truth to power was a life sentence for me, because every agency that I went to, civil rights, U.S. Department of Labor, U.S. DOT, U.S. DOJ, and some came to me, including the Department of Defense and the FBI. The more I told them, the worse it became. Couldn't believe it was a living nightmare. So I'd give them all the information, and they'd say, "Well, how did you figure that out? Or where did you look that up? Or what responded to that?" And here I'm thinking,
they're not interested in what the facts is that you have. They want to know, well, how did you acquire this information? Yeah, that's standard flipping,
And I was so busy patting myself on the back how smart I was for figuring all this out, I just about choked myself with...
they're trying to figure. They're gaining information from you, trying to figure out how they close the door so no one else can find this stuff out.
Exactly.
Are you still an independent contractor now, or what are you doing?
No, they sabotaged me. They forced me out of business. I couldn't fight. I got sued. I was a federal witness on one case for the EPA and the U.S. DOJ. I was sued for slander, although I had federal witness immunity. I had a $1.3 million lawsuit by a union in area that I'd never even heard of, East Islip, New York. It was a federal lawsuit. I was never noticed. I was never served. And I didn't even know the judgment was out there. I found it by accident and finally had the union and their attorney backed into a corner that they falsified all the documentation. I never owed them a penny. It was whistleblower retaliation. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It was also, I believe, clearly it was misogyny. And I didn't last in construction 30-some years pulling the woman card, I can tell you that much.
Well, let me ask you this. How far up the chain do you think it goes? Do you think that you've got any public officials, senators, congressmen, governors, anybody in there that know any of these?
Governor Cuomo in New York had reached out to me. His office reached out to me and wanted, in 2013, I believe, wanted me to be his poster girl for a successful woman in construction, and I would be on posters, and I would be on this, and I would be on that. Well, I said my mother raised some gullible children, but no stupid ones, and I could see that it was getting close to re-election, and he had increased the contract participation for women to 30%. And the other half.
So what you're telling me is they pulled the old Brandon Coleman on you before they actually pulled it on old Brandon Coleman. Is that what you're telling me?
Pretty much, yes. However, they didn't realize is that I was the real deal and that I wasn't going to do what I was told, and that when I continuously wasn't paid for the work that I performed, I mortgaged everything and became a general contractor instead of a subcontractor, and I started taking projects that normally, the same old people would get time after time. Well, all of a sudden I was getting the contracts and performing the work, and then all hell really did break loose. So, but I really am trying to stay focused on how the depth of the corruption with the politicians, with the legislation, and with the programs. And I haven't even touched on the SBA. I hope that I'm trying to get a hold of Senator Rubio. He is the chairman of the Small Business Council, or someone.
Right.
I'd like to really get to Congress because these programs have been funded for decades, and there has been no quantifying of their success. They just continue to be funded, and in my humble opinion, after 10 years of research and after supplying substantial amount of information to a half dozen government agencies that found me credible, testifying for the U.S. Department of Justice on 2 occasions, and being a whistleblower, that these programs were established to funnel money, and it wasn't to help veterans or small women or minority-owned companies.
Well, you need to keep pushing, to say the least here. We're running out of time. And since you are pushing, number one, anything we can do to help you, and what you're doing, please let me know. Let us know. But in what you're doing, if you have any updates, if you would please let us know. And, if you do get any of these meetings or, I just hear so many times people, talk, they get to go talk to Congress and, before Congress and this and that. And I really question what good it does. Are they just going through the motions themselves to say that they took it seriously? But they had a meeting, you got to talk, but nothing happens. That seems to be what's happening. in a lot of areas.
Well, it's kind
certainly
of like reporting to the oversight agencies. You know, the agencies are only as good as the people entrusted to enforce the laws. I do just want to add the positive of this is that, well, I met Jay and Becky and Rory and Jason, and it's been an extraordinary opportunity yourselves. And back in New York, there were a group of us that met on social media. We'd all been entangled in government corruption in New York, and we kind of joined forces, and we have a documentary out there now. It was shown privately in Washington at the Whistleblower Summit, and we're trying to get into a few film festivals, and we realized and recognized individually, independently, and as a group that we'd been going from agency to agency, and just things were only getting worse. Nothing was getting done, and our stories weren't being told. So Kathy Cole started a company, Whistleblower Productions, and we've filmed a documentary and hope to start screening it. And somehow or another, we're not going to quit. These stories are going to be told.
Well, when you get all that, you know,
there,
if you start showing it, if you let us know, you know, like if you're going to show it this week here, this week there, next week over here, you know, come on the show or give us the information. We'll promote it. We'll put it out there, you know, and help spread the word on where people can see it. Give it to me. I'll put it on my YouTube channel. But then, you know, people aren't going to be paying to see it. But, you know, whatever you need, however we can help, you know, just let us know.
Thanks, Ivan. And I'd like to extend the same things to listeners out there or to yourself. People call in to you. I have a pretty good understanding of these programs, and if there's a veteran out there that feels frustrated or something isn't right, you're probably right. There's a lot to be said for instinct. So and that's how basically I got started in this portion of it. Is that veteran came to me and asked me for help. Subsequently, I helped a few other veterans, and at one point, in my company, I had 3 disabled veterans working for me that became part of my family. So I appreciate everything that you do, that all the advocates do, and to our veterans, because without you, none of this would be possible.
We appreciate the kind words. We do. Please keep us in your thoughts and prayers, and something comes up. You got any updates, give us a call. You want us to help you spread the word on where this documentary is going to be shown, all you got to do is let us know. We'll get it out there, not just on the radio show, but all our other marketing avenues as well. Mary Ellen, I'm going to put you in the blue room here. We're going to wrap the show up. I do have Michelle Bruce, who wants to make a comment. Michelle, you got to keep it brief now, because I'm actually over time right now. So, Michelle, you're live. Go.
Okay. Thank you, Ivan. I got a reporter that's been she's doing a lot of different stories here on the VA. But the main thing that she's trying to get that is all the malpractice lawsuits. Because it appears that Atlanta VA has the most in the whole country right now. And she told me that if the doctors or nurses that has lost their license by the state, the VA gives them where they don't have to have license no more if they work for the VA. It doesn't matter if they've been revoked or not. And that's what she told me. So I do have her number. After the show, I'll give you her number. She's probably listening to the show. Her name is Regina, I believe. and she's from South Georgia. And her and her team is doing a lot of different things, and she's reaching out to all the veterans here in Atlanta, as well across the United States. And she'll be doing a lot of different stories on whistleblowers, malpractice, all kinds of stuff. So I just want to reach out and let y'all know that tonight.
Appreciate it, Michelle. That, I got to ask you, is that Jackie Gleason in the background or what?
No. No, that's my big fan. Keeping me cool.
Okay.
Keeping me cool.
All right. Thanks, Michelle. I appreciate you calling in here. All right, we got Michelle in the blue room. I forgot one last thing here. Mary Ellen, I'm bringing you back on live here. I forgot to be polite, and I always give our guests a final comment. So, any final comments?
Telling truth to power can be a life sentence, but we have to stick together, and we have to fight this.
Amen to that.
Yep. Sometimes it's hard to do the right thing. Thank you, Mary Ellen. Appreciate it. All right. That's it. Any final comments with you, Rhonda, or are you yelling at the dog? What's going on there? Yeah, she's not even there. She's yelling.
She's muted, yelling at the dog.
I had it muted again. I was typing. Thank you, Mary, for coming on. You've got my number, so just call me anytime.
All righty then.
Okay, that's it.
That's it.
I'd like to thank them all for coming on.
Yes.
And I do have a quote for tonight. And it comes from Willie Tomlin, no less.
Oh, boy.
I always wanted to be somebody, but now I realize I should have been more specific.
Yeah. I agree with that one. Totally agree.
Other than that, y'all have a good night.
Y'all have a good night. This is the Buchanan Report Radio Show, September 3rd, 2019. Y'all have a good evening. Be careful.
Yes. Good night.